A long-term defender of nature, with a weekly Guardian column, this person tells the truth all the time. And in fact, in October 19, he also got arrested with us in the rebellion. It's my pleasure to welcome George Monbiot.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely to see you here. Now, when ministers respond to us, they say, why are you bothering? Look, we've got our target. Net zero by 2050. We've made some speeches. We've published some documents. Look, we've got some words, lots of words. So just go home, don't bother, leave it to us because we've got it. We've got this. We're in control. There's no problem. What more do you want? Well, yes, some action would be nice. Because the fundamental problem is the atmosphere doesn't listen to speeches. It doesn't respond to promises. It's completely unimpressed by attempts to fob it off. It responds only to action. And what that means is it responds only to cuts in greenhouse gases. But again, they say, well, what's the problem? Look, we've cut greenhouse gases 49% since 1990. And you say, fine, yeah, okay. You know, if you completely disregard the gases embedded in the imports that we bring into this country, fine, yeah, we'll give you 49% since 1990. But what they've done is all the easy stuff. Almost all of that has come about as a result of replacing the means by which our electricity is produced. The transition from coal to gas and the partial transition from gas to renewables. Fine, yeah, we'll have it, that's great. We're happy with that. So far, thank you very much. But then they've stopped. They've stopped dead. And since that transition, since that stuff which has been happening with electricity, nothing at all has been taking place in any substantial form in any other sector. And the reason they did the electricity first, and I'm not just talking about this government, but of successive governments, is that it made almost no difference to our lives. We flick the switch, the lights still come on. We don't care how that electricity was produced, the lights have still come on, that's fine. But everything else that needs to happen involves a transformation of our lives. It involves the government and others mobilizing us to change our transport habits, to travel less and by different means, to discourage us from flying by means of frequent flyer taxes and other mechanisms, to insulate our homes, to reduce our energy demand, to change the means by which we produce our heat. All of these things require our involvement and they require politics. They require difficult political negotiations and political choices. And no government that we have had so far is prepared to do that. So they're cruising. They're living on past successes. And they're not prepared to follow those with any tangible present or future successes. And this is where the crisis lies. If you look at our transport emissions, they have now flat-lined for 10 years. There's been no improvement. Haven't got any worse, but we need to be reducing. If we're to prevent more than 1.5 degrees of global heating, we need to be reducing those almost to zero within 10 years. If you look at our domestic building emissions, those have been rising since 2014. And at the current rate of replacing our heating systems, it'll be done in 700 years. By which case, basically, we'll be stratigraphy. That's all we'll be. We'll be part of the fossil record unless they turn this around and turn it around very quickly. So, no, they haven't got it. They haven't got this at all. They're not even bothering. There's nothing happening except the words, except the conferences, except the summits, except the targets. And even the targets are completely unrelated to the task of preventing runaway climate breakdown. There is no connection, no scientific connection at all between the Paris Agreement aim of no more than 1.5 degrees, the Paris Agreement aim of no more than 1.5 degrees of global heating and the government target of net zero by 2050. That's a political target, it is not a scientific one. But they will not amend that target. They will not even have a discussion about amending that target. And I have to say that the Climate Change Committee, which basically said this is the target, knowing full well it is the wrong target, has played a dreadful role in enabling the government to ensure that it misses its commitments under the Paris Agreement. But hold on, the government says, hold on. We'll build new infrastructure. Of course they'll build new infrastructure. The primary purpose of new infrastructure is to provide profits for the people who commission and build it. That's what it is primarily for. Sure, some of it has a secondary purpose of providing some public services, sometimes deliberately, sometimes accidentally. And sure, we need new green infrastructure. There's no doubt about it. But that will get us nowhere unless we simultaneously retire the old, dirty infrastructure. That's the key task. Preventing climate breakdown is much more about the things we cease to do than about the new things that we start to do. And we have to retire the dirty things we currently do. That's what we have to stop. So how's that going? Not at all. There are no plans whatsoever to retire the existing dirty infrastructure, this absolutely crucial task, without which we cannot possibly prevent climate breakdown. Instead, as we've already heard, £27 billion on roads. Every single airport in the nation has plans to expand. They're going in exactly the opposite direction. And as we've heard already, the same applies to the extraction of oil and gas. We've heard about this extraordinary policy of maximizing the economic potential of oil and gas from the UK's continental shelf. Exactly the opposite of where all climate scientists are now saying we need to be, which is retiring existing reserves, let alone bringing new ones on stream, let alone maximizing the process of bringing new ones on stream. And this is a process hatched and pursued by this department. So my friends, we're in exactly the right place here. Now, when this department tried to justify the policy in the Energy White Paper, do you know what they said? It's wonderful. It could have been written by George Orwell. They said, it's important to maximize economic recovery of oil and gas because that will attract foreign investment, and we need the foreign investment to get us out of fossil fuels. So in other words, unless we burn as much fossil fuel as possible, we can't get out of fossil fuels. This is what passes for logic within this department. And these are the people saying we can trust them to get this done. But horrendous as that is, it's not the worst of it. Because this government is party to something called the Energy Charter Treaty. How many people have heard of the Energy Charter Treaty? That's exactly as they want it. They do not want you to know about the Energy Charter Treaty, Because the purpose of the Energy Charter Treaty is to thwart the popular will. It is to prevent democracy from happening. Because what it says is the following. If governments try to stop the extraction of fossil fuels, if they try to stymie any fossil fuel project, if they try to leave fossil fuels in the ground, fossil fuel companies can sue them for the loss of their future anticipated profits. In other words, they can sue them for the loss of money they don't even have. Money which is entirely theoretical. Money which is out there somewhere in the future. If they were allowed to do it, we would make this money. We can sue you for that money which doesn't even exist, and those lawsuits can amount to billions. Billions of pounds, billions of dollars. And at the moment, a British oil company is suing the Italian government under the Energy Charter Treaty because the Italian government wants to stop oil drilling in coastal waters. It's an extraordinary situation, not least because the Italian government isn't even party to the Energy Charter Treaty. How can this be? Well, the Italian government pulled out of the treaty for very good reasons in 2016, but the treaty contains something called a sunset clause. Isn't that romantic, a sunset clause? You picture them going hand in hand into the sunset. But what a sunset clause means is that even if after you've left the sodding treaty, you still can be sued under that treaty by fossil fuel companies. There's no escape. So in other words, they've nailed it down. They've set something up to make it impossible to change that policy. They've set something up to ensure that the future anticipated profits of fossil fuel companies are legally and officially more important than life on Earth. So these people in here who are party to this treaty, if they cared, if they really were on this, if they were trying to stop climate breakdown, they would be all over this to find a way of dismantling that treaty and preventing it from operating. So you must ask yourself, well, why aren't they? Why aren't they all over it? What's going on here? What's going on is that they believe that is the right priority. That the future anticipated profits of fossil fuel companies, among whom number some of their most generous donors, are indeed more important than life on Earth. And I think I can reasonably say we disagree. If I've read this right, when I ask you if you think that life on Earth is more important than the profits of fossil fuel companies, you will say yes! Who says I can't read an audience? Okay, so we have this situation where they are trying to nail it down, to commit us legally to climate breakdown, to commit us legally to the end of the period during which human life and much of the rest of life on Earth can flourish. So in other words, this is a crash course towards disaster that they have pushed us on. And we have no choice, if we believe that life on Earth is more important, than to resist. We have no choice than to rebel. We have no choice than to persist until we have won. And we come to them. We come to them in anger, but not in hate. In anger, but not in hate. We come in love. Yes. If they accept the hand of friendship that we offer, we will shake it. COVID or none, we will shake their hand. And however many times they slap away our hand of friendship, we will continue to proffer that hand. And we will say, if your policies are good, we will embrace those policies. We will cheer those policies. We will applaud those policies. But if your policies are bad, we will oppose those policies. Not in the spirit of hate. There is too much hate in this world. There are too many people dividing us with hatred to ensure that we don't respond with righteous indignation. There are too many people finding scapegoats for us to hate. There are too many people trying to distract us with hate. There are too many people trying to stop us focusing on what is important, life on earth, and to focus instead on hate. So we don't do hate. We do anger, but we do love. And we love through our anger, and we are angry in our love. Because in a world of hate, and a world of extinction, in a world in which we are being driven, literally, metaphorically, deliberately, driven towards the very edge of the cliff, in this world, to love is to resist. Thank you.